All right. Good afternoon and welcome to this 8th edition of Anamine Conversations, a free-flowing conversation regarding the challenges and the way forward for the industries. And today's segment is for pharma and healthcare. And we have very interesting panel for this talk. We have Sivaya Kota from Natural Remedies in Bangalore, an alternate medicine and a herbal, a very interesting proposition in today's time. So we'll like to know a lot of interesting stuff from you, Sivaya, on how you see the industry moving from here. We have Vikram Srivastav from Ipca Labs joining us from Mumbai, and a lot in news as we hear. We also have Hiren Dani from West Pharma, and he will be representing the packaging and the component segment of the pharma industry. And we would be expecting Masood Sheikh from Alembic join us in some time. Hopefully, he got pulled into some management meeting last moment. Welcome all of you and welcome all the attendees. Thanks for joining in, and we look forward to having a very interesting conversation. But as has been tradition for the Anamine Conversations, we start with one quick ice-breaking question. And this is not a prophecy, it is just a guess. So question for this panel is, when do you think we will have the vaccine for COVID? Would it be in 2020, 21, or beyond? We will not hold you accountable for it. It's just a guess. So go ahead and make it. Sivaya, let me start with you. You're not going to make it, I know, but your guess.
Yeah, I think I believe vaccine somewhere between October and December is possible. Like companies like Gilead, Bristol Myers Squibb, and even Indian companies like Serum Institute, all are trying it. Hopefully by somewhere in October and December, there is a possible breakthrough coming out, most likely. But we need to wait for it. And the recent situation says that we need to live with Corona. There is no other option. And we have to go ahead along with this and then sustain and survive through this pandemic.
Okay. So in OND 2020 is what Sivaya is guessing. Hiren, your guess?
Yeah, see, the best guess still goes like maybe October to December, but I mean, I think I was seeing some news today morning where they said that we are still not having any firm for SARS as well. So let's not have any positive thoughts about that, and maybe this becomes our way of life forward, because we might have to live with this COVID-19 for, I don't know, 4 years, 5 years, or maybe 7 to 10 years. You don't know. So yeah, obviously, being optimistic that it may come October to December, but the situation doesn't look like as such today.
Okay, Vikram, you?
So, I mean, I would agree with Sivaya. I mean, the best case scenario currently is looking like, time frame between September to December, with the kind of, developments I've been reading through in journals, phase 2, phase 3 trials, timelines and all. So the best case in my mind also is the last quarter of the year, September to December. A more realistic case would be, I guess, middle of next year. I mean, I am presuming that by middle of next year, definitely we should have a vaccine with the kind of effort and the focus with a lot of research and development firms and organizations across the world. So my belief is that middle of next year, definitely we should come up with some vaccine. I mean, if not earlier.
All right, thank you. I really hope Santa Claus gets the medicine by Christmas. That would be nice, but if not, then like Vikram said, possibly by mid of next year. Thank you. That was just an icebreaker question. Right, let's get started. And my first need. Oh, we have Masood here. I'm sorry. Hi, Masood. Welcome.
Hi, Rishi. Thank you. I'm sorry, I was in some other meeting.
I know, Sheetal told me. Thanks for joining in, and we were just talking about you. So Masood, let me, since you've joined just in nick of time for our first ice-breaking question, we have this tradition of asking a quick question before we start the discussion. And the question here was, when do you expect the COVID drug to be released? 2020, 2021, or thereafter? this is just a guess. Don't worry about it. This
As rightly, I heard that Santa Claus kind of something. I just entered and some Santa Claus was happening. So although it has been told that July, September or whatever maybe, but then we have to now just presume and live with it now. Think
sure.
of that it is going to come and live with it. Nothing is going to change the current situation.
Actually, it feels very good to hear a more optimistic scenario from the pharmaceutical industry, and that's very good for the people. So, right, thanks, Masood. So let's get started. Like you're saying, the first thing we would want to know, and since all of you are like today a frontline warriors as an industry to this whole scenario, the first thing we would want to know is how you have been tackling this situation from in the last say 2 months or so, considering that while this is an industry which is most required in on the front end to tackle, but you also face the same challenges like all other industries in terms of shutdowns, the transportation issues. So how did you manage to maneuver through to get to the customers, be it the hospitals or the distributors, retailers, to reach all of us? And I would like to start with, say, the manufacturers, Vikram and Masood. So maybe Vikram, you can get started, and then we'll go to Masood.
Sure. So I mean, before COVID hit us all, I mean, till February it was business as usual, and I don't think so anybody in the world in manufacturing or the entire value chain of the pharmaceutical was ready for this kind of impact and disruption. I mean, I term this as a black swan event, where it is the rarest of the rarest. I mean, any sort of planning would not have build this kind of scenario where the entire lockdown across the world happened. And it was unique in a lot of aspects, because initially when news from China started to come in, we only thought it's going to disrupt our supply side of it, because a lot of actives and chemicals come from China. I mean, that's how the pharmaceutical world is divided. I mean, India is the lead manufacturer, and China is the lead supplier for all chemicals and actives. So that's how we thought that it's going to be only a supply disruption. But as things started unfolding in March and then in April, we realized this is one of those unique propositions where not just your supply but even your demand is under complete disruption. It was an end-to-end chaotic situation that was created, where both the supply and demand came to a halt. So very unique learnings in that aspect. And a lot of people have been asking how we were managing. So I mean, I look at it how we've progressed through the 3 lockdowns that we have had in India per se. So lockdown 1 was a complete chaos. Even though from day one government was very clear that pharma is essential service and manufacturing and supplies have to go on, but a lot of reactive decisions were done. I mean, initially all transport was stopped, so we were struggling with supplies of the basic packing material, connecting the raw material to the plants, etc., etc. I mean, it was per se the manufacturing unit per se cannot operate on its own. I mean, the entire value chain has to be freed up and made available to convert raw material to finished dosage. So the government was pretty reactive, I would say. It was, I mean, yes, nobody could have planned for this. So the government was also learning with us. But having said that, we were on the forefront of things. Hydrochloric, HCQS was touted to and is still, being very highly recommended as a go-to medicine right now. So we had a complete supply chain disruption. So we had to overnight look at how we can get additional material in, how we can allocate resources at our manufacturing sites, because even the supply side of it, we were not getting enough manpower at our manufacturing plants to manufacture. So the entire cycle was kind of reactive in the mode, where we used to understand a problem and then run and firefight it. So the lockdown 1 was pretty hectic. As we approached lockdown 2, things became very clearer. Government regulations also were clear. The essential services tags were given to also the suppliers and suppliers, where movement of trucks and goods was enabled. So the supply chain was less stressed, and that is how we've been progressing. I mean, at this point of time, lockdown 4, I'm not sure what kind of relaxations the government is going to make, but whatever is at hand right now, we are looking at our supply chains getting back to par.
Okay, and your factories are where in Batti and Sikkim and all in those places? I heard that they are.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We are spread across India, so we have manufacturing sites in Dehradun, in Sikkim, in Indore, in Silvassa. So it's spread across India. The problem was with a lot of interstate movement, because even with the state borders getting sealed, it was very difficult for raw materials, say from Goa, to reach up to Sikkim. So Sikkim was our main site, which was manufacturing hydrochloric acid for India supplies. So we had to, manage a lot of, supply chain uncertainties and disruptions of shipping basic material, printed components right across states, from MP, from Maharashtra, all the way to Sikkim. So those were the challenges that as an industry we faced. But having said that, the entire industry and the support system was up and running to help the pharma industry. I have to say it out loud. Even the government was very reactive. When we were having very regular discussions with the health ministry and the DCGI and everybody, and whatever concerns were being raised by us and the pharmaceutical industry in general, government was coming up with new notifications and provisions to help ease the entire supply chain for ensuring that drugs get manufactured and delivered.
Absolutely. Thanks, Vikram. Thanks a lot for that perspective. Masood, how was your experience at Alembic?
Yeah. Just let me tell you, the moment we came to know from China, the news which was leaked, and the situation was very bad. Obviously, the APIs and every ancillaries was coming from that particular site. So on that particular day, when the news was there for 2 or 3 days out, this particular epidemic had happened. Our supply chain had actually had a pre-planning things, by getting the materials at whatever cost and whatever year, at least for 6 months. Let me tell you that, And we
And
had
when did
planned
this
that.
happen, Masood? This
This
happened in
was
February?
February, yeah, mid-February, when the news was leaked from China. So we were aware that this is going to happen, and China being a main market and the epidemic is very severe, the things are going to stop. And once that particular thing stops, obviously the import is going to be affected kind of thing. So from that planning way, even when we were actually at the production level, we started producing at least for 2 months. We planned that let us not look at the inventory levels now, not as look at, but particularly let us go all out for the production kind of situation, so that we don't face any problem in that place. So planning was most important thing, which was there from our side, kind of the entire supply chain, from production to suppliers to PPIC to purchase. Everyone came together and started planning, how to get and which are the materials which were short, and how to get the smallest of the materials, at least for next 6 months. That was first thing which we did. Because this was only the pharma industry who reacted very fast. Let me tell you, none of the industry was so much reactive as pharma was, because then we started getting into a group called PDHF. I think you know that, particularly run by Mr. Krishna Parab. We were in the member, at least around 150 people will be there in the members of that particular thing. So we started discussing almost on a weekly basis or a daily basis what is going to happen, how which are the areas where we are getting affected, which are the CFA who are getting affected, which are the transporters which is getting affected. In the same group, the transporters also joined I can tell you the name of the transporter called Balurghat and Scorpion. These were the two transporter who got into that particular thing, and they came out selling that if you do not get, these are our trucks which are there for whichever location you want. Although we might have paid a premium for that, but then nothing stopped us. Even to that extent, we hired a Bolero, we hired a Innova, whatever could happen, and got our raw materials, packing materials, maybe from Vapi to Sikkim or wherever we wanted, kind of thing. So that what happened. Then also I was a member of an IPA also when my management proposed me to get into an IPA, and Mr. Sudarshan Jain, where when we were talking about whatever situation was happening and it was getting resolved, the result was that whatever difficulty we were facing, we were discussing on a daily basis. Like they had a three kind of situation where ancillaries, distribution, transportation, and import export. These three topics were being discussed, and wherever we were finding problem, whether it was Baddi, whether it was Sikkim, whether it was maybe some Punjab areas or whatever area, we started moving that particular thing, and then we made a group saying that this is an essential medicine. The truck cannot be stopped. The truck drivers cannot be stopped at any level. Whatever passes they want, whatever security they want, whatever food at the road, whatever they want, we started doing it. Even the transport association came into the picture, and accordingly we were able to mobilize that kind of thing. So I think it was a blessing in disguise for a pharma industry. One is the opportunity was huge at that particular time. Only the industry which was happy during this time was the pharma industry, and and other industry which was struggling kind of thing. So this was an opportunity for us, and we really grabbed it. Let me tell you, in lockdown 1, 2, 3, I don't initially there was a problem of some areas getting people were not allowed to go to the CFAs. People were not allowed to go to the CF. There also we started mobilizing through the state local bodies and getting the passes to them, and making them mobilize, taking the, because it was not that easy that in the lockdown period my 23 CFAs, my 3 CSPs, my factory locations, my APIs, everything was running off, and automatically certain incentives, certain additional benefits was being given to all the people, and things went off well. So I think blessing in disguise, things was better and better day by day the moment it went off here. And now when it comes to about the lockdown 4, now we don't know which is the area which comes under red zone. We don't know right now where it will be orange, where it will be green. So it is a very dynamic situation where we have to now live with it and then see the alternative where we can do now. So this is what we were managing our shows, Rishi.
Excellent, Masood. I think two very important points that stand out. One is the you picked up the leading indicator from China well in advance, and that helped a lot. I think, and that's why we read Alembic so much in economic times of late. With stock prices going up as well. And the second part was on the collaborative planning. I also read that a lot of pharma companies have got together, whether it is approaching the government, IPA, daily basis meeting, and also bringing in the other players in the chain, like truckers and everybody also on board. So I think that's a very, very positive outcomes of the whole situation. Thanks, Masood. Let's talk to our another value player in this chain, Hiren, representing the West Pharma. Hiren, how did you support the pharma and industries in this, and how did you go about planning during this period?
Actually, as I think that Masood said, the situation at that particular point of time, I mean, or I think what Vikram also said, like, the first lockdown one, like, maybe people, I mean, yeah, of course, we never saw in a lifetime something like this. So it was a surprise package for everyone that how is the lockdown will be like. Friday evening we came from office and understand that, okay, from Tuesday the things are going to stop suddenly, and people will not be able to move, how the production has to run, material, how will be, supply will continue. There was a situation like, where the stress from inventory and working capital, and all of a sudden overnight to see a shift and getting a messages that forget about the inventory, start building inventory, shouldn't stop. So all shift in, I think what Vikram said rightly, the whole scenario changed overnight, and instead of controlling inventory, we are on the other side without understanding as to how we go. But the point was to have the lines running, so the whole, because somewhere we belong at such a point that might be the part is so small, ultimately it has to go a long way, the things can stop somewhere, and it was a very crucial time. So March was a little roller coaster for everyone, understanding how to move. There were government orders first. I mean, yeah, the very base thing that government was clear as the essentials doesn't have to stop. And again, I would say rightly pointed by Vikram, government was too reactive, whatever the market has to say, but they were very clear and they were very much knowing that which industries have to run. There were clear government first lockdown, the government order was very clear that these are the industries which have to run and they cannot stop. The transportation, the logistics for these industries should not stop. Yes, of course, because it was the initial time, we did experience some hiccups in the transportation. The trucks were stopped, but when initially when people approached and showed the order, they explained to the people, it was moving, and obviously we can understand that those people who were the police who were standing on the roads 24/7, we have to understand certain frustrations of them also. So all said and done, at some point of times there were with passage of time, I think after April 10, 15, the things became smooth as such. They knew that if these are the goods or these are the industries who keep moving on these roads have to go. So that was logistics wise clear. We started increasing transportation. Some the best part about it was somewhere in the point of time when we keep discussing most of the time that suppliers should be near to you so that you can have a JIT. But somehow it becomes a blessing in disguise if the supplier was far. There were goods in transit, so your inventories for a particular period of time did not get impacted. Your raw material incoming was continuing because I already had goods in transit started coming in, and before they arrived, the only thing which was supposed to be ensured is after arriving at the port, it goes off in green channel straight away and doesn't get impacted, which were very well supported by customs. We never felt any impact. Of course, the LCL, some point of time there were issues, but then it moved very well. So we had good time with inventories, building up the inventories, no major impact as such. We could do that uh, very easily with the passage of time. And then after April 10, 15, it became more easier. But yes, the supporting industries like the carton manufacturers, pallet manufacturers, we need plastic pallets, we need wooden pallets, all those are the specific things where we still struggle because you can't 100% classify them into essentials, and other than that, the machine wear and tear, the spare parts, somewhere those are our mechanical industries where you need to do some furnishing equipments and parts. Those industries were completely locked down, so we still had to take some approvals, go to yeah, overall the approval process was not that bad. When we say that we have this, we are from this, so for us the approvals were granted to them to open up, and we could still manage that. So very clear, like this time at least we can say that throughout the phase government was very clear which industries, what has to run, essentials. There, if you read the first government order, it was very detailed, describing which industries and the. I mean, we could have expected that the government would have said only pharma companies, but no, they were clear that pharma will not be able to run if you don't give them the feedback. So the field of pharma industries, their raw material industries, the companies or the industries which are supporting pharma industries are all very precisely in the government order first time. So all those points, they are very positive, and maybe that was the reason where we didn't experience major hiccups. But yeah.
So thanks, Hiren. I think what I'm consistently hearing, and this is not only from pharma but also from the other webinars that we did, is a lot of positive feedback about the government machinery and how it reacted from the industry perspective, and that's good to know. Thanks, Hiren. Shivaya, how did things look at your end? I know you have a factory in Dehradun as well, up north. So how did you manage?
Yeah, Rishi, thank you for this. And initially, we were, at March end was this problem, and we thought we were just preparing what to do, like that kind of thing. And then we started March end. We are able to doing invoices from home, and we provided laptops to C&Fs, all those kind of things we did. But there is a backend problems were started coming up in the first week of April, because there is no last mile delivery transporters. All transports are closed all across the country. C&Fs are unable to dispatch material, and the material movement is not happening. fortunately, and we are able to do some initiatives. Like what we did was that one initiative we did was cluster management, which we did within the range of 200 kilometers of C&F. We made own vehicles, hire vehicles, like covering around 200 kilometers range of 10-15 distributors carrying metal and delivering it. Then within the 10 days time, we are able to manage this. Some transports are coming in, and at the same point of time, the primary logistics was also a challenge. A lot of transports not willing to come forward, and some of the very good transport system we have built over a period of time. Like I would like to name those transporters named Rivigo and Delivery was upfront and delivering our materials all across the country, direct to customers as well. So to some extent we did, and from by 10th of April we are able to manage the secondary logistics coming forward to a fill rate around 90%, and then our ODIPs are significantly increasing over a period of time by 10th of April. And that is one of the cluster management has really worked us in a way to made the metal available to the customers and distributors as well. And one more thing, what we did was we understood that no, this pandemic is an opportunity for the mature brands to do well, and we immediately started working on which are all the mature brands, and we took one initiative called invest into inventories of mature brands, so that no, the proactive planning was done with collaborating with supply chain, all the teams purchase and all those things. So we are able to project for the next 4 months, 5 months plan. This is what is going to happen with the mature brands versus the AOP. AOP was done based on the current understanding, but the pandemic situation has given a different understanding altogether in terms of sales planning. Then we gave them, and the procurement team started working on it. And our supply network and the supply chain effectiveness or the delivery has significantly improved by around 15th of April and 20th of April. We have come almost to normal by 20th of April by and large. And then there are a lot of things that another challenge what we, I think all of us said by Masood and Hiren as well. The problem is that CNFs are coming in red zone. They were not allowed to work, and local police has no other option to come and stop them coming to offices. What we did was that we made another option. There is no other option because there are places where CNFs are stopped working completely. So what we did was we took for permission from the local police to work from morning 6 to 9 o'clock. Invoices are done from home by the CNF staff and coming to the CNFs from morning 6 to 9 o'clock and dispatching stores. So a lot of this kind of innovation is possible now, and this pandemic has made us to learn a lot of things that you don't need to really work 24/7, but with a very little amount of time, still you can run the show without impacting the ground sales. That was a really critical learnings we made, and I'm sure these learnings during this time, whatever all the companies are making it, are going to be very useful for us to move forward and do much better after this pandemic is over. Yeah.
Excellent, Sivaya. So very good innovations from the logistics perspective, and also what I hear again is the importance of collaborative planning. I think that brought about the highest importance above statistics and everything in this situation, right? It's everybody coming together. So great, and kudos to all of you personally as well, from all of us in the country, so for doing your bit to tackle through this situation. Now my next question is on the specifics of demand itself, and this is a personal thought process as well, as I was reading in the newspapers and everything. Now the whole focus across the country was in tackling the patients of this pandemic, right? So and deal with them. So products like paracetamol, not only in India but across the world, was high in demand. And then we heard of this magical name that people like me had never heard, was HCQ, anti-malarial drug, which possibly have a good impact. So that started. So and then there is, of course, there was a question on what's happening to the pre-existing diseases and where are those patients with the hospitals being off limits and people trying to avoid. So what I want to understand from you is, how is the shift in the products itself that you see as a result of all this? Of course, you went all out and responded, but are there any patterns coming out either in the domestic market or in exports where there is a shift in the demand pattern of the either APIs, formulations, or the drugs itself that you produce? So is there any interesting insights from that perspective? Vikram, you seem to have nodded in negative. Was that for me?
No, I do have a lot of, insight on that. So, I mean, carrying on from what I started talking about, the complete supply chain disruption and, the way we are looking at COVID. So, I mean, it's in my mind, we always used to say we are all in the same boat, but in this case, I would want to say we are all in the same storm. So the entire world, we don't know what has hit us. The entire world is in a turmoil. So I like to divide it into three phases. I mean, phase one, in which probably we are right now, was the complete disruption. I mean, both my supply and demand, like I was mentioning previously to you, the entire supply chain, value chain got disrupted, not just for pharma. I mean, which like you were saying is, essential medicines have to go, but we saw a lot of disruptions in supplies and in demand profile in the short term. So the way I look at it, we are still in phase one. Phase two is what I think once the lockdown starts to open is what we'll see is the demand volatility. I mean, right now, a lot of demand for a lot of drugs we see are flattening out. So we are probably looking at a V or a U, rebound to demand. So that is where I'm looking at demand. I mean, because see, essential medicines and life-saving drugs, it's going to come back on track. I mean, the only concern will be going forward. How do we, look at growing business? Is the impact of COVID going to change the dynamics of business? How we approach new business? How we approach new product launches? Telemarketing, MRs having digital interface with doctors and patients. So all that to me in my mind is probably going to shape a little further in the phase three as I look at it. Currently, yes, the demand has flattened out a little bit. Now we have somehow we have tried to structure the supply part of it. So the supply chain in the supply chain end, the supply part of the activity is currently slowly coming back on track. The raw material inflow is smooth. All the packing material is coming online. We are getting staff and critical labor back in the factories. So the supply part of it, I think we are solving it pretty nice. In the phase two, we'll have to start looking at how we approach demand in this new business environment. Is it going to be a V rebound for us, a U rebound, a W? I don't know what demand curve are we going to look at, but definitely, until we have
early indicators, any early indicators that you see already that it may not be firm, but
see, early indicators in my mind is looking like a V curve. So we are expecting at least the pharma demand to go back to the levels it were very quickly as the lockdowns is now getting relaxed more and more and across the globe, not just in India. So in my mind, we are looking at a V. So demand will come up to where it was in a fairly quick time frame in my mind in about 2 to 3 months. But the main concern is about growth. Business is all about growth and innovation, because we are in the generic pharma industry. So how do we grow and innovate going forward? What are the rules of engagement going to be? What kind of changes are we going to expect from doctors, from patients, from our own MRs and sales representatives? So that in my mind is a question mark to me right now, where I'm not really sure how the business paradigm is going to be, how we're going to approach new business. So that is something in my mind that only time will tell. I mean, and as we go across from phase two, where we look at demand getting back to the pre-COVID levels, then we start looking at how do we grow business, what are the new rules of engagements, how do we start innovating new product launches, etc.
Sure, Vikram, thanks. Masood, do you see any shift in the demand patterns?
See, let me first tell you that I think we have already heard the Prime Minister's speech, and in that Prime Minister's speech, he might have at least taken 8-9 times supply chain as a topic. So the most changes what we are now observing is basically the importance of supply chain in the industry now. So whether it is a CFA, whether it is a transporter, whether it is a warehouse people, or whether it is a distribution person, whether it is a demand planner, or everywhere. So one thing what we have to take from this particular. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Hello. Yeah. So
Yeah.
one thing, what we as a supply chain heads and supply chain people have to say that this is an opportunity for us. How we can fulfill the demands and how can we reach upon the every nook and corner. Let me also tell you that when we talk about demand, obviously there was uh, a disease where which people used to take very lightly for a cold and flu kind of situation, and that has become a most important disease now. The moment you have a cold and fever, you are just running to a chemist and getting a cold tablet and whatever tablet may be, an antibiotic or a cold, cough syrup and all. So that automatically an acute industry, acute market has gone up, by multiple folds. Even at the cardiac level also, we see a lot of improvement as far as awareness which has come to the customers today. People earlier we used to just avoid certain things, but this particular pandemic has given an awareness that health is more important than anything else, and everyone actually now has been struggling with the health. This is a very cautious industry we are dealing with, times we are dealing with, and this is going to improve upon the obviously the industry, the pattern of growth, and obviously the awareness which is there in the country. And one has to be whether from the level of having not to get all this kind of disease, so how he can be immune to himself, to the tune of uh, having a right medicine at the right time particularly. As far as demand which is there, initially, yeah, in the month of March and April, till of April, the demand was very much high. People with a panic started hoarding the stocks at the patient level, even at the stockist level, when they came to know about SCQL and azithromycin and other drugs. So automatically there was some panic buying in initially, which has now tapered down, but then it is going to move on, because this is not the disease which we are talking about. It is going to end up in a month or so. It is going to continue in 21 also and in 22 also probably. So obviously this industry is going to benefit out of this, and it is going to go up. And how best your marketing guys are there and how they can get into the market and get the shares of from the doctors is all the trick what we have today. So this is what is my side. Yeah.
Sure, Masood. Thanks. Hiren, do you see any shifting patterns from demand from the pharma companies as we exit this scenario going forward? Do you see any interesting patterns emerging from West Pharma perspective?
I think this will continue exactly where we left in the first question, right? And I think rightly said by Masood, right? You already said that they started preparing and buying inventories earlier so that the production line doesn't stop, and it's the whole value chain. So all will do the same thing. So the demand, obviously there was impact, not only demand but then also the lead times, the earlier lead times, which was you will
Exactly.
you think that people are placing orders with a proper lead time, like in advanced planning and everything, that everything had reduced suddenly. Now we see, if earlier there was a purchase order raised at 8 or 10 weeks, now it is coming at 3 or 4 weeks. Everything is needed earlier, and now, as I earlier said, the situation or this kind of phase is the first time that we or this generation is seeing. And so there is, obviously, we might say that it's been 2 months now, so we have settled in it, but then there is still a panic there inside, because overall, even if you see country level, the number of cases have not reduced. So nobody knows at what point of time any decision changes and if something drastic happens. So I strongly feel that with the passage of time or from now on, there will be a decision, not only essentials, but even for non-essentials, somewhere that planning inventories for next couple of years, people would want to have more of raw materials and FGs in stock, maybe 2-3 months, so that the production for next 6 months or my demand for next 6 to 8 months, I have in my plant today, including raw materials, so that nothing stops, and most importantly, essential or non-essential, but the customer base doesn't get disrupted anywhere. That, the picture for the next couple of years would be to maintain the customers than to lose the customers, because people would want to continue the production. If you're not able to provide, the things may get shifted. So we'll have to ensure that 6 to 8 months we cover the demands. Everyone would have to ensure that demands for next 6 to 8 months are being stored in the plant, including raw material and finished goods.
Interesting, Hiren. And to this point, we will touch upon in the next segment on the supply side of things. But before that, I would like to go to Sivaya. And Siva, I have a very curious question for you. And you represent alternate medicine, right? And especially in our country. And this has, we are seeing a lot of emphasis on natural and plant-based and herbal kind of medicine to counter the COVID, or at least make yourself more immune. So do you see a lot of surge in the business or exports or inquiries? How do you how has been the experience for natural remedies in this situation? I would imagine that you should definitely see a spike or a shift in the pattern from yourself, right? So why don't you share that with us?
Yeah, absolutely right, Rishi. And we are seeing, to be honest, we had very good order bucket with us right now. For those immune boosters, we have some portfolio which can improve immunity, and we have very good orders actually in our bucket. We are unable to supply now because of the orders were actually threefold. For last right from March, April, we got threefold orders. We don't have the raw material supply chain working because most of our sources are from the nature. So, like catchment areas, people has to go, and forest, lot of areas, medicinal plants has to grow. It cannot come just like that. So there is again, but we have really there is a surge in demand for these products, and we have threefold orders for those kind of segments. And I just want to bring a few more points related to demand, how it is surging around. 2 points I want to make it very clearly. You can see that at least from now to September, October, the medical reps or the demand generators are unable to go to meet the doctor because doctors, hospitals, or healthcare professionals won't give an opportunity for the medical rep to meet and explain their products. And this will certainly help surge in demand for mature brands because which comes to the top of the mind and of a prescriber is a brand which is very established, which is very easily available in the marketplace. So mature brands, I'm seeing there will be 20 to 30% surge in demand for all the mature brands all across the companies. That is one of the reason. And one more important thing, the companies are also unable to launch new brands, at least till October. They don't venture to launch new brands. So this certainly creates a kind of demand surge for the mature brands. And of course, my colleagues are telling there from Vikram is telling about and Masood is telling about chronic segments doing well, diabetes, cardiovascular, and neuropsychiatry are obviously going to do well from the like allopathic side. And from this herbal and herbal nutraceuticals from our side, herbal medicine from our side, we see definitely the demand is very good, and we are seeing very positive this year, and hopefully we will do well as well from the demand side is concerned. It's all about how fast we can fill the demand coming up. That's very important for us.
Great. So I can sense the excitement of increasing your market share already amongst this, while others are scrambling to get things in order. Sevaya would be looking to expand the market share. Thanks, Sevaya. So and good luck for that. So let's talk about the supply side of things, especially as we go forward, right? So we know that the country, in India, we became one of the largest players in the pharma in the world. And in this whole process of becoming competitive, we also ended up, creating a lot of dependency on China, right? As we understand, about 60 to 70% of the RMs come from China, and this has come to bite at this point, right? Now, of course, what I hear from you, one of the strategies is to increase the RM inventory, and so that it lasts longer. But considering there could be expiration issues, that there could be, it may not be really a long-term solution. How is industry looking at solving this, and considering that the whole world moved against China as well, and we discussed this in all the webinars. So in the longer term, of course not straight away, but longer term, how is industry seeing this whole dependency to be mitigated, if at all? Or you think it will be business as usual, which is also what some people think, that things will be forgotten and we'll go back to a normal, including dependency on China. So Vikram, how do you see things?
So see, yeah, I mean, see, there are two distinct, benefits that China has, and that is why it has this, global position of, supplying chemicals and active ingredients. One is, you know, the environmental policies and norms that you have in China. They have become stringent over the years, but the way the government was promoting the entire, you know, chemical belt near Huai, near Zhangzhen, all these provinces. Number one is that, and number two is very important, and we all need to be cognizant about, is the economy of scales. You know, I mean, the volume at which China is producing these chemicals and supplying across industries across the globe makes these chemicals, cost effective. So if because these chemicals are not very unique in their nature, and they don't need a lot of, you know, specialized technology. Even India can manufacture it. But these are the two factors in my mind where the reasons where we are not able to, you know, pull through. So initial talks through the COVID, you know, lockdown period for the last 2 months, already government is waking up to it. We heard about, you know, collaboration happening. So government is also talking about collaborative competition, you know, where they make special chemical zones, the areas where you have shared services of, you know, pollution treatment plants, you have EFT plants, where you know, ancillary units, different competitors in that area can use that same facility. So you can bring down your cost, you can meet your environment and pollution norms, and at the same time bring down your cost. You have the volumes, and then, you know, you slowly start to compete with China in that terms. It's not going to happen overnight. See, China made this, you know, their position so strong in the world over 2 decades of sustained, you know, efforts by the government and the industry over there. So we'll have to start somewhere. I firmly believe. I've been hearing terms like deglobalization. You know, we prior to COVID, we always used to talk about offshoring and globalization and multiple sources. Now I've started hearing new terms like deglobalization, localization, offshoring. So people are conscious that, you know, we need to de-risk. So, and there is also coming a very fine balance between cost and risk. So the risk mitigation part somewhere is taking precedence over cost, at least in the short term. That is what I see. So there is going to be innovation. I think India has a very good opportunity to, you know, with the help of the government and the statutory bodies, of course, that we set up these industries, basic chemicals, you know, key intermediates. We can manufacture them. We're manufacturing all complex molecules and drugs. So why can't we manufacture the chemicals and the actives? You know, we have the technology. It's all about, you know, that financial viability and getting all the ease of business, the statutory clearances through very quickly, so that it really promotes that industry. You know, the government promotes this as a way forward, you know, and we probably in the next, you know, 5 to 7 years probably make ourselves, you know, strong enough where we can compete with China. But at this point of time, I don't think so anything is going to change overnight. We're still going to be dependent on China. But the intent, of course, is there, and, you know, supply chain executives, the government have already started talking about it, and it's not just in India. Globally, people are talking about de-risking their supply chains. So yes, I think there is a scope.
So to sum up, you say it will happen, but nothing in the immediate future. It probably would take, like you said, 5 to 7 years before we can say that we have de-risked from China. Right. Thanks, Vikram. Masood, do you have any different views on that?
I have the similar view what Vikram has actually, and because not as quick as, you know, our dependence is going to we slow down, because even after such a pandemic, still we are actually wanting to import from the same China kind of way. The situation is such that when I think of our leader, Mr. Modi has been using a word called Atma Nirbha, whatever, maybe self-dependent. And that one single thing, you know, if suppose a pharma industry together goes to the government and say to be independent in this, you know, the policy has to change. The benefit has to be there, you know, for the manufacturer who can become Atmanirbhar, and we have a capacity of that. Initially, the only thing China, which I think have taken was a price war, nothing else. Because the moment this industry, which we have seen products coming under PCO, products coming under control, and so many other things, obviously the companies from the years down the line has gone from the cost cutting kind of situation. And when it went to cost cutting situation, the API which actually was available in India, obviously it was much cheaper in China, and then it kind of the demand was totally been raised at China. That Vikram also will agree to that particular thing. But slow and
Yes.
steadily, if the policies changes and if the government gives some kind of relief to this industry and bring back that kind of thing, the restrictions and whatever maybe, so we can also do a better kind of manufacturing, which we were already doing it. And let me tell you, with this, I think India will be much better option from the world than China. And this is a time where we can hopefully do a very good job being, promoting our vocal kind of local kind of situation to the government. And government obviously is working from this particular point of view, how this industry can be, further more strengthened. This is what I also feel.
So I'm sure as part of the IPA and other organizations, there are discussions with the government for the policy change. And you think if the policy does change in very swiftly, then these timelines that Vikram was mentioning can possibly be shortened?
It will be short. It will be shortened possibly, because see, I'll tell you things. What even Hiren was telling earlier, the lead time and all, what time, even the permission time, the permission which used to take 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, down the line. Now it was coming within the week. Any notification and anything, it was coming on a discussion of a day yesterday, and tomorrow the notification was. You have seen, none of the time we have seen such changes of notification from the government side. So government machinery worked much faster than the private machinery. Let me tell you, this was the first time when we felt that we were slower than the government. We used to just. I straight can be carried forward. Obviously, then what Vikram was telling about 4 years, it can be easily within 1.5 year also we can manage, if we can be able to put up rightly to the government. Yeah.
Great. So, and we really hope that swiftness in which the government is working today continues, and for as a permanent feature. So, thanks, Masood. Hiren, how much is your dependency on the say China or other imports, and how do you see your views on this?
We don't have much dependency as such on China. I mean, ideally, I would say there is no dependency, nothing comes in from China. But just from a broader perspective, the whole thing will have multiple dimensions, if as per my understanding or as per what I think. One, obviously, there was a price war where China won, and over the globe, actually, rest of the world and China. So, because of their mass production and capacities, so they could win the price war, and they became the favorable supplier across the globe. But uh, I just don't want to name, but then the global shift, what's happening with this COVID-19 pandemic. There might be a situation where the forced decision comes in that whatever it is against the price war also, or against the pricing, we would still need to shift out of China, and that's where China might start losing on the price war. Well, that's the only thing that they have, and they might start losing it, and India would start gaining there, because India will not have high prices, but will also have a quality competitive edge against China. And other part of it, the major portion, I feel today is, if you divide the industry like today's world, we can say essentials and non-essentials, or the electronic parts. The electronic or industry is also one of the major that China has, and for them, I feel not an overnight shift, but 6 to 8 months or 1 year to 1 to 2 years shift is possible, because major electronics in China today are of US companies, and if it's decided, that move will happen surely. As soon as the things start getting normal, the companies will be deciding to move out of that plant. And that is like, we see a lot of news these days that all the chief ministers of India, along with the center, are starting to have, how they will lure the other multinational companies to start establishing in India and look at India. And we started listening that people are looking at India. So that is that is the part of it. For sure, pharma, it all depends, because for this company like Masood and Vikram would agree to it, that it's not easy for a pharma company to shift raw material supplier, because there are a lot of FDAs and regulatories come into picture. So it will surely depend on how fast FDA starts reacting. I understand earlier, if they have to change a packaging or a raw material, it takes a long time, and FDA says stop replacing raw materials because they don't have time to review all those stuff. But now we have to see how FDA reacts to that shift of raw material to raw material, and how fast they approve, they start reacting to it. That will make a sense. So when government gives a policy of shifting out, I am sure they will think about pharma and non-pharma. That makes a lot of sense out of it. If they say that Atmanirbhar or local and self-dependence, have to consider for pharma a very separate set of guidelines, because pharma is more dependent on US FDAs, and approvals and changeovers are not so easy here.
Sure. And so what I'm hearing from you is that is probably sentiments which are playing a larger role against China at this point than anything else. But from that perspective, even FDA may be driven by those sentiments in the shorter term. At least till Trump is around, and there may be something. So, but we don't know. We'll see how it plays out. So,
FDA will be driven, because again, it's like as we say US FDA. So it will be driven for sure, not by sentiments but by force also sometimes. But it also, there is a perspective of workload, because when every pharma company starts shifting, as we know, both the gentlemen will agree, maximum raw material, and you also said 60% raw material comes out of China. So if every pharma company starts shifting, FDA will be loaded like 24/7 working also would be not enough. So still there would be a time lag that we need to give for.
Absolutely. Sure. Thanks, Irene. Now, Sivaya, listening to all this, I'm not sure if you have any dependency at all from China, but how do you see the opportunity for herbal medicine perspective again here? And do you see any threats and challenges in terms of competition arising because of the rise in demand globally, either within the country or outside from other Asian countries?
Yeah. Rishi, we depend on China for packing material particularly, because the cost.
Okay.
Yeah, we depend hugely. In fact, 30% to 40% of our packing material comes from China, and but we can still manage. It's not so big challenge. But the thing is, as I agree with Masood and Vikram, the major challenge is the price war. What China can offer is a scale-up economy, and they can offer at a price where very difficult for the Indian manufacturer to offer at that price. So it not the turnaround time to shift from China to India local manufacturing probably can happen over a period of 3 to 4 years. Considering the government will act positively and proactively, but all that happens for 3 to 4 years. But at the same time, China can also neutralize our efforts by reducing further prices, all those kind of things. I'm sure they won't sit quiet. So this is a very, very critical time. At the same time, the pandemic or this kind of lockdowns has helped India to rework on the strategy for the next 5 to 10 years. So positively, India has an opportunity now to compete and at global level, and definitely improve our local manufacturing as well. Coming to this, your question that herbal products, yeah, we see demand coming up across the globe now, and we are ready, and we are already supplying materials to 40 countries. And we are sure that now the origin will improve much better from now on. At the same time, the consumption in those countries will also increase significantly now. So we see this a very, very positive outcome, and herbal products and pharmaceuticals will positively will have great impact across the globe, like in the medicine segment is concerned.
So do you also see a rise in the competition for you in terms of more companies getting into herbal medicine as the demand rises, and as you acquire more market share, there would be a cannibalization? So how do you see that shaping up?
Yeah, you see, herbal medicines, the formula is very, very complex. The formulas are, it's not so easy to derive the formula and the combination of phytochemicals to what we add it and other companies do it. All these are patented products. It's not copycats, very difficult to manufacture as well. And the particularly combination mix of those, very, very difficult actually. It's not so easy. And achieving that quality and those parameters to achieve was very, very challenging. And there are a good number of companies in India, and I'm sure there will be competition always, but still, and I think the industry as such, the cake will grow. Everybody has the opportunity to get the share of the cake. So we should not feel competition. India is going global with these products, and more opportunities are going to come. That's what we feel.
Okay, very interesting. I think you need to safeguard and put your formulations in a high secret zone at this point as the interest rises. Thanks,
Yeah.
very interesting insights. So now let me go to the last segment, and I would like to ask about the function itself. And like Masood mentioned early on, that the importance of supply chain in the whole scenario, and henceforth. And we saw this again not only in this segment but across industries. The importance of supply chain and planning has now risen up in the further up. I would say it was always important, but it has assumed a new importance. What I would want to know from you is the how companies would move from here in terms of changing the function, the more investments in technology, and the importance in terms of what we heard so far was say things like machine learning, agile planning, the collaborative planning. How do you see things changing? And one more question on it: is there anything that you would do different in the new normal world as a learning from this scenario from the supply chain planning perspective? Masood, I would start from you, from left to right,
Yeah.
from my screen.
Now, I think technology is going to play a vital role, and till now, whatever actually in this lockdown of 52 days or whatever days we are actually, technology played a vital role, because nobody was actually using this kind of Zoom and go to meeting and everything. When everything was available, people used to just travel for one meeting across the globe or across the country and just go and do the meeting. Whereas today, we finding sitting at one particular place, addressing to at least 500 people. I think that has become one particular thing which was advantage. Second thing was speed kind of situation. One of the things which actually we were discussing and then sending a mail and then getting a word and then implementing it. Right now, it has been actually talked over face-to-face kind of situation. Where you have 10 people and you can immediately delegate 10 people what you want to. And this technology only made this possible. Let me tell you. Maybe pre-COVID year, if I have to define my role and my time of utilization in the service was around 9 to 10 hours. Right now, I think even I am extending to 11 hours basically because we are actually becoming so much involved into certain things which we are unknown. And we feel when we sitting at home, we feel that arey ye reh gaya, ye wo reh gaya, or something has been left out. So everything is getting pre-planned rather than postponing kind of situation. So obviously this technology is going to play a very vital role. Obviously the people with the digital knowledge is going to play a very vital role. Digital is going to be in a front row sitting driving this particular entire business. And obviously when physical is going to be a doubtful element in future too, at least coming 6 months. Digital platform is going to play a very vital role as far as the country is concerned, and let me tell you, this is giving much faster result than what we used to be in physical. At least I can tell you from my side and my experience. Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
and Masood, I was asking more in terms of the implementation of technology in the supply chain planning perspective, and what would be the...
obviously, I think you just want to get into that demand planning kind of situation where people are going to have that auto demand planner kind of situation, and get into more technology driven kind of thing rather than an annual kind of situation where we used to have when we be physical. So yeah, there will be a shift of in technology, and more dependency will be on the technology kind of.
Great. And anything that you would do differently going forward as a learning from the supply chain planning
First of all,
perspective?
I'll myself train myself, basically towards technology. So getting into, for example, I was selling something, just I need 2 hours training on an Excel, whatever, so making a presentation or thing, the dependency on the secretaries and the people down the line was there, that is going to reduce. So you have to be self-dependent on yourself, so you should know what presentation you're making, what kind of VLOOK you're getting into, what kind of Excel or excellence you're going to work out. So it is more important that you learn first, then you talk about and you get into this. Obviously, yeah, it is.
Okay, talking about the technology, and we face the glitch.
Yeah.
Right. Thanks, Masood. Thanks a lot, Vikram. Your perspective.
So yeah, I mean, see, taking a cue from what Masood was talking about, the entire digital, experience that we've all had in the last 2 months. I mean, digitalization was going to happen any which ways. I mean, it was the next phase of how we are going to work about. If anything else, the entire COVID has accelerated that process. The digitization and digital transformation of not just supply chain of the entire business. The way we have operated over the last 2 months, teams remotely operating, sales and marketing, finance, HR, everybody is in a lockdown mode, and people have been able to operate and deliver. So if anything else, yes, I mean, digital is here. It's here to stay, and it's here to help us, assist us in doing business in the most optimum way. Going forward, the way I look at how supply chain, probably in pharma is going to be, we are going to look at two key aspects from our perspective. Is one is flexibility, and the other is agility. How quick we are to demand, how quick we are to absorb costs and deliver quality medicines. That's going to be the key going forward, because once the demand rebounds, there is going to be a lot of pressure on everybody, and that is where we are looking at digital tools, we are looking at demand sensing. A lot of people have been talking about IBP and talking about demand driven MRP. So we get closer to the market, we sense what kind of demand curve we are looking at, and then do our material planning, so that we release a little bit of working capital for the organization. At the same time, we plan in the most efficient way. Plus, more than this, from IPCA perspective, what we are also starting to talk about is move from, at least in the mid to short term, move from a traditional SNOP to a SNOE. So from a sales and operations planning to a sales and operation execution. So get closer to the market, get closer to my supply chain, get closer to my factories, and the focus and the eye has to be on execution at this point of time. Of course, planning is going to be there for all strategic and long-term decisions, but at this point of time, in the mid to short range, I'm looking at innovating and moving from SNOP to SNOE. So that is something that we are looking at. Also, a few things, we started actively looking at suppliers and suppliers and their suppliers, looking at second and third tier suppliers, so that we have full visibility on the supply chain. We don't have any surprises coming through. So that is also something consciously we are trying to start to do, so that we have a complete eye and we secure the entire value chain of our supply chain.
Excellent and very interesting. I would say a new term for me, SNOE. So good luck for that, and I think we will track on that as well. Thanks, Vikram. Hiren, what's your perspective on all the things that Vikram and Masood brought out? Would you think that especially with demand sensing being playing an important role henceforth, would it be end of Excel sheets, or we will still stretch them harder?
So you rightly said, and that was the first thing I had on my mind. I don't know, but as in supply chain, I can say that whatever the advanced version of forecasting tool or planning tool you have, you cannot write up Excel sheets. All macros, micros, and Excel on the Excel file with a large Excel sheets going up to BZ or EZ columns will continue, and that is, I don't know why, but proper planner at the production level feels comfortable with an Excel sheet than a data on the system. So and today also, like, we have SAPs and we have those modern tools wherein system generates the forecasts and demands and everything, but still the guy wants to continue with his Excel sheet. So that's somewhere the human or a person's comfort zone lies, and that will continue the parallel. But yes, of course, I rightly what Vikram pointed out, the now we were only worried about our supplies from our supplier. Now what we talk about is, do you have raw material? Where do you procure your raw material from? And can you reserve this much raw material for me? So those are the additional perspective. I am trying to see how and where is the starting point of a material that I'm using. I'm trying to ensure that the entire chain is secured. So which is an additional aspect of on my supply side, and similarly on my customer side, on my demand side. Until now, I was only like bothered about what numbers are put in the system in terms of what forecast I have and am I prepared for that forecast. Now, over and above that forecast, I'm still talking with those top 5 or top 10 customers on my sales list, and I'm trying to understand from the account managers as do they have any perspective, what additional do we expect out of it, and somewhere I'm trying to push them to talk to the customers, the purchase guys in the customer industry or in the customers companies, that do we expect anything? Do you want us to stock something, some specific SKU more or something like that? So until now, we were saying that if I have a purchase order, we will start making or we'll start stocking. At least give me a scheduled purchase order and I'll stock for you. Now I'm saying give me forecast and I'll start stocking for you. So the whole scenario is changed, because I know if tomorrow a pharma company would react, I need to react or I need to turn around in a shorter lead time. And so the whole perspective of looking at a particular supplier or a customer is not ending at that point, and we go 2 steps behind as to what are they doing, what are they developing new, what is going to come in next 6 to 8 months or 1 year, and accordingly on the basis of their forecast we start planning our operations.
Excellent, Hiren, and I think that's an important point, something that we discussed in Middle East webinar as well. So the whole, we will not just be forecasting our demand, but also the supplier, and it would be something that almost faded is a term that I remember CPFR coming back to the whole importance once again, and that's very interesting. Thanks, Hiren. Sivaya, your views on the supply chain planning.
I think this new normal is slowly establishing one of the important things. Digital push of information to the customers and all across the chains is going to be the reality from now. And another thing is that virtual connect. We are now this pandemic has made us to learn virtual connect with people, customers, dealers, distributors, manufacturers, production offshore, everywhere. It's being like that now. I think this is again going to be reality, and the one-to-one meetings or the meetings will come down. Virtual connect is going to be the more or less the order of the day from now. And another thing is that now what is the challenge which thrown at every company is that like distribution network and last mile delivery. What we understand from this pandemic is that building an agile distribution network is very, very important to ensure that supplies are not impacted in the future. That's one very, very, very crucial point for all the organizations to take care in the future. Otherwise, what are this kind of scenarios are most likely going to come and go. But unless we build a last mile delivery network, we will be not able to be successful in the days to come. Another thing is that I really agree with Vikram's point of view, including more players in SNOP to maybe turning it as SNOE or some other name. But more players should come probably so that now we make it SNOP processes more robust and sensing demand from sales, marketing, more number of players to come in. That makes much more meaningful and much more agile to work around and provide required inputs to the production teams. Another thing is that possibly if a tool like AIML, artificial intelligence and machine learning tools that can help sense demand maybe on a day-to-day basis or a weekly basis now, because now we see an Excel sheet monthly, we see the trends, series, all those kind of things. Possibly, we need to much more at a lesser periods. We need to be able to analyze it. Probably, right tools can help us sensing the demand coming up in the marketplace, how the demands are altering. So that will enable us to forecast much better in the coming days. I think that's what is actually industry is looking forward. To be honest, it's very difficult to predict what will happen, which product is going to sell well, which product is not going to sell well. So if any tool that can help us to predict this kind of analytics, that makes the demand plan the job much more easier, and he can predict at least near closer numbers for the planning is concerned.
Thanks, Avaya. And I think you actually summed it all up as well. So demand sensing, agility in planning, collaboration across the the company. It's all going to be very, very important. And I think I can give you this feedback that this is the feeling across the industries as well. So I think that's how the function will move forward. So thanks a lot. I know we are a bit out of time, but I think that it's not enough to discuss the this whole industry. And thanks once again for being at the forefront of this war, and also taking time out to join us. I'll just check with Sheetal if there are any questions from the participants. Maybe we can take one or two, and then we will close. Sheetal, are there any questions?
Yeah, there are a couple of questions over here. So I'll just
Okay,
it's basically, I'm just combining two questions over here. So after lockdown, the planning equation for the organization is impacted differently in the short-term view. So low demand and high finish inventory
Sheetal, we can't hear you. You need to get closer to the mic. We couldn't hear you.
Is it better now?
Yeah, it's better now. You'll have to repeat. We couldn't hear you.
Lockdown, the planning equation for the organization is impacted differently in short-term view and low in process inventory and huge demand lockdown. How can we pitch in this case? A lot of difficulties with the raw material and obviously some reduced capacity at ports and airports. So what could be a solution for this? We had more or less in bits and pieces discussed this. As Masood had, initially said that they had procured about 6 months of inventory from China to mitigate the risk. But overall, maybe we can touch upon this point as well.
Okay, I couldn't really hear the question very clearly. If any of the panelists could, then okay. Sheetal, we lost you in between, and I was hoping.
The only thing is,
okay.
what I could make it from Sheetal's question basically is that now since this pandemic and situation has been, every company has jacked up their productions and the inventories. What if the demand goes down and the inventory remains as a concern for the companies? That's what I think she meant for that, right, Sheetal?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So Masood, you pick it up. So yeah, Masood.
Yeah. So I would just tell you, because the more you be vigilant in this situation is more what you are going to benefit out of it. So obviously on a sales front of kind of situation where on month end and whatever sale is which is going to happen, unless and until you monitor and be in the market what is going to happen, like for example, obviously this particular market of acute and chronic has jacked up, and other kind of situation where maybe a skin disease or maybe a gynae kind of situation where it is the demand is bit slowed down, so earlier we used to also have this kind of SNOP meeting and all, which was once in a month. Now I think we are taking a weekly meeting, let me tell you, with the PPIC, with the production, with the distribution, with the sales. So this is giving us a vigilant kind of situation where we are planning much things ahead of what has to be postponed, what has to be controlled, and what material has to be taken. Because although we may be planning 1+3 or 1+4 for the month, but when it comes to a situation when we know that the reality was there closing to April, there were certain therapies which actually grow and other therapy has actually taken a backseat. So obviously that repeated therapy has to be controlled and not go as per the trend what was there pre-COVID, and just see what situation is happening post-COVID and how the things are moving, and slow and steadily actually control both the kind of things. Not country, but then being vigilant in the market, looking at the situation of the market, and then reacting rather than reacting only at the end of COVID or kind of situation. It needs much more planning between the COVID period also. I hope
Yes, so I think
I have answered that particular thing.
yeah, sure, Masood. And I think the importance of sensing there again, being very close to the ground, keeping your ears very close to the ground is what is important. Thanks, Masood. Sheetal, any other question?
Yeah, so I'll take the next question. It is how to validate and identify the best cost-efficient network to achieve the necessary service level across the value chain.
Most cost-effective network.
How do we validate and identify?
Vikram, would you like to?
The first question, what particular cost, particular thing, when it started, I gave my instruction to my people saying that you take the cost separately. Let us have a service kind of situation today. Yeah, Vikram, you can answer this.
So I would agree with Masood. I mean, in the short to near term, definitely, the cost versus risk equation, like I was mentioning. So the focus now is on risk mitigation more than cost, because in this scenario, people are not generally talking about inventories. Masood during his point mentioned that they have stocked up about 6 months of raw material inventory. So the focus is on ensuring continuity of business rather than growth. So at this point of time, we are looking at getting closer to our demand, getting closer to our operations. We are looking at squeezing the planning cycle. I was talking about FNOP to SNOE. That is nothing but you're getting closer to your execution cycle, and try to be as close to the reality. What Masood also was mentioning in the point just before this. So at this point of time, I don't think so. Organizations are really especially in pharma, are looking at per se the cost angle of it. The business continuity, the supply chain continuity is taken precedence over it. So even at higher rates, people are buying and securing their supply chains just to ensure that business continuity is there. Because like I was mentioning, once we move from phase 1, which was a complete disruption of both demand and supply, and get into phase 2 where demand is going to rebound. So at that point of time, you don't want to be wanting for material. I mean, you want to feed your manufacturing, your supply side enough so that your sales and marketing team can go out and try and capture and regain their market shares. So the focus for organizations is that at this point of time. And the best formula, I mean, nobody knows what the best formula is. I mean, this is something that has us for the very first time across this panel. I guess nobody in our lifetimes have faced a situation where we've been locked down for almost 8 weeks now, and the entire world, not just we. So it is unprecedented. We have to learn, relearn, and probably unlearn a lot of supply chain concepts and get back to a lot of basics going forward, in my view.
In this situation, the most important role which was played by finance, I think our finance was the most efficient people who used to approve any kind of cost. So you can imagine. So cost was not that, but agility was more important than anything. I think Hiren also is agreeing to that.
So good to know. Yeah, Hiren, go ahead. You want to add?
I think just just a simple example is a 20 rupee mask, face mask in March was bought at like 100, 150, even 200 rupees, just to ensure that we keep the employees safe and the production continues. The target was to continue production and serve the customer at whatever cost.
Okay, great. Thanks, Hiren. And I'm hearing very, appreciation for very unlikely quarters like finance and government, and so COVID is bringing in some appreciation.
That is called a new norm now. They have been also recognized now.
Yeah, absolutely. Why not? So great. So Sheetal, any more questions, or do we end?
I'll just take the last question.
Okay, last one.
It's how will R&D, inventory management, supply chain become more transparent and proactive for the critical customers and diseases.
Okay.
That's like more
R&D becoming more critical for the for what?
For the critical customers.
For the critical
and the critical disease.
So one of the things I was reading about main pharma was that supply chain getting involved at very early stages of the product development as well in the US. So I know I just remembered that as these questions came up. But Sivaya, would you like to take that? How what role would R&D can play for the critical?
Yeah, absolutely. What actually R&D teams now is that generally they just focus on whatever they have this candidates available with them, keep searching where they can suit and which disease they can treat. But now the lot of information is coming from the marketplace. What are the diseases prevailing? Which there is like there's definite need for a particular molecule or a particular segment. So the feedback is coming from the sales teams and through the marketing, and it goes to this like R&D and F&D centers, and then the collaboration happens with supply chain, whether it's a viable proposition to make it or not, what could be the cost and what could be the profitability, what could be the challenges coming up in supply chains. And that was actually at the ideation level itself is a lot of integration is taking place now, so that the end when the everything is finalized, it should be a very profitable proposition for the organizations. That's what actually happening in the industry, I feel now.
Sure, Shivaya. Anybody would like to add to that? Or all right, then we'll close here. It's almost 4:30. We'll let you go and get onto the war again, if not to with the families as the weekend starts. So thanks again for all five of you and everybody on the call for joining us. It was again a great learning session. A lot of interesting ideas, thoughts that were discussed. Thanks a lot and have a great weekend. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you, Rishi.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care, everyone. Be safe.
Thank you.
Bye.